Hi friends, I'm Jen and you're watching Snippets with Patterns by Jen, a video series challenge that is designed to inspire, challenge you a little bit, and get you using your stash. Today we are going to use the stitches on our sewing machine to quilt. So I'm going to have you grab an orphan block, doesn't matter what size, and a backing. Batting if you like, you don't have to use any. If you don't have an orphan block, go ahead and cut a 12.5-inch square of fabric for the front, a 15-inch square of fabric for the back, and if you want batting, a 15-inch square of that as well. All right, I will meet you over at the cutting mat. Here is my bucket of blocks. It goes all the way down. I have so many left over from testing out the blocks for the monthly color challenge. So there are a ton to choose from. I'm going to show you which one I chose. I am going to go with this spool block from one of the color challenges a couple years ago, made in grunge fabrics. So I'm choosing this block, and I grabbed a leftover piece of wide backing. I have this strip left over, so I just chose to use that, and it is pretty close to being perfect. I do need to watch because there is this selvage here, so it's going to be pretty close. I'm not too concerned about not having a great amount of fabric all the way around because I am doing this by machine and it's a smaller piece. So I'm going to show you quick how I prep my backing. I do this for the larger quilts that I quilt as well, but obviously somewhere like on the floor. So I'm going to just use regular painter's tape. And when you do this, you're going to do this in the same order that you would if you wanted to do a larger one, if you wanted to try a larger piece someday. You're going to go ahead and tape the middle, go across, smooth it out, and kind of pull it taut from the middle on the other side. And then you'll come to the next piece, and again, pulling it taut. Now, on a larger piece, I would do middle, middle, and then I would do each side, and then the same. And this time, I'm just going to do the corners, just because you can see there are bubbles a little bit. Now, I'm not too concerned with this because it is a practice quilting block, but it makes a difference, I think, when you are going to quilt a larger piece. You want this backing to be not pulled so tight that it's going to spring back, but you do want it taut, smooth. Okay, and then now I am choosing not to do batting. If you were to do batting, and especially on a larger quilt, you would want to also smooth the batting out, and then tape it down, making it nice and taut, nice and flat. Okay. Now I pin based. I can't use spray based. I'm too sensitive to it. So I do use pins that have that curve, these quilting. Okay. Now when you are pinning a large piece, you want to start from the middle, work your way out. So I'm going to do the same thing here. They say about 4 inches is a good amount to have. I go about a hand width from where I'm going to be pinning, and with this, again, I'm not worried about getting too much because it is just a little piece that we're doing here. Now, I have not decided yet what my quilting design is going to be. I'm kind of thinking I might do maybe a line of floral. I think I've said before that I really like the wavy line. stitch that comes on my machine for quick and easy quilting. I might just do that just so you guys can see that, because if this is your first time trying this, I do want you to try it. I want you to have some success, and then I want you to practice, because none of it gets easier, right? We have to put in the time. It's not just going to come, for most of us, it's not just going to come easily. All right, so this is all I'm going to pin. And let me get this. Now, if you can spray baste, definitely do that. It makes a big difference in your quilt, just because when you're pinning, then you have to stop to take the pins out before you quilt over them, right? Whereas when you are pin basting, or spray basting, excuse me, you don't have that. But it is a little bit different for spray and pin, so definitely look up some of those. But I have to pin, and so here my block is ready. So now we remove that tape. And you would remove it, if this is a larger piece, you would remove it from both the backing and the batting. And notice I did not tape the top. And when I do a larger quilt, I don't either. I just start in the middle and I'm smoothing it out. I like to smooth out the quilt before I start climbing all over it and pinning things. But again, starting in the middle gives you that chance to continue to make sure you have smoothed it out and it is nice and flat. Okay, so we're going to just take it to our machines just like that. I almost forgot to talk about thread. So you can choose to, since this is a practice piece, you can go ahead and make it, you can use whatever color you want. If you want to be able to see your lines really well, you can make it a contrasting color. For instance, you could do white on this to see where your stitches are going. I'm going to try and make this into just a mini quilt because I really like the block. And so I'm going to use an orange. This is Gutermann. I use this on everything. I piece with it, I quilt with it. I piece with polyester gray, and then I quilt with whatever color matches best. So whether it's polyester or cotton, that's what I tend to use. So this is a polyester number 460 from my Gutermann, and I will quilt with the bobbin the same color, because when, even if your stitches and your tension and everything is really good, you're still going to see a little bit coming from the back just because of how the needle pulls that thread and how that all interlocks to make your stitches. So I quilt with the same color on the top and the bottom. Okay, now let's go quilt. Okay, and we're going to quilt. I'm going to go ahead and use the wavy stitch just because I want to keep it as simple as possible for you. So if you have your wavy stitch, we're going to go ahead and use that. I did go ahead and stitch some up for you. So I encourage you to grab a piece of scrap fabric and just go ahead, see what you like for stitch length, how deep you want your squiggle to go, and how close, how far away, that kind of thing. So go ahead, grab a scrap and go ahead and practice that. I'm just going to go ahead, come over here and change my stitch length, or not my stitch length, change my stitch to 46. That'll show my squiggle stitch. So you could, if your machine has all of this, you can, go through and try some of these for some smaller quilts that you might want to use on to quilt them up. I like to use them and the lettering on your microwave posies and put the recipient's name on there just to make it a fun little personal gift. So, All right, so we are going to go ahead and start quilting our block. With this stitch, I am going to actually start quilting on the edge and go ahead and go down. I'm not going to worry about starting right in the middle of my quilt because I want these stitches to go ahead and go through the whole thing without stopping and starting any more than I have to. Now I have switched my foot, and this is just the J foot for my baby lock. It isn't a free motion quilt. I do tend to use a walking foot for this kind of quilting, but I didn't want to use something that you might not have because I don't want to turn you off from this. So we're just going to use the J foot, and this works well for this as well because I don't have that extra batting in here. So if you do have a walking foot, I would encourage you to go ahead, put it on and try it as well. First row of stitching, I'm going to use the edge of my J foot to just follow my seam all the way down. Grab that back thread. Okay, here we go. And we're just going to follow that line all the way. I actually don't watch the stitching. I watch where my presser foot is on my quilt block so that I'm following that line. Now, if you want other lines to follow, you can do that. You can use marking utensils to mark your quilting lines and that kind of thing so that you aren't freehanding it, free motion quilting it if you want, all on your own. So here we have, let's go from the back because the orange matches that darker one a little bit. Okay, and I want to show you this because I don't want you to think all of my stuff is perfect because I'm online, right? You could see these aren't, some of them are really nice and some of them are a little pointy, and I'm just not going to worry about that, right? My next stitch then, so I started from this side, okay? My next stitch I'm going to rotate and go the opposite because I don't want to have, you get those lines that happen when you quilt the same direction over and over again. So we're going to switch it up. Now I'm going to go ahead and line up on that seam again, and I'm going to quilt this, but I'm going to be going the opposite direction. Now I will say I think part of my problem with that stitching getting a little pointy is because I wasn't making sure that I was going through at a really nice speed. And also, I'm going to show you one little thing when I'm done here. Get all the way to the end. I do not have quilting gloves on right now, which can also affect how you are how you are moving your quilt. So I'm going to grab mine here in a minute. But again, you could see this is actually probably where I started talking and I wasn't paying attention. But now I've got this nice and quilted, and I don't have the little ripples that you get from going the same time. Now the problem will be, well, maybe not for you, but for me, the problem will be remembering which way I went. And so what I'm going to do is take my pin, and I went this direction for this one and this direction for that one. So now I know when I go on to the next row, I don't want to go this way. I'm going to turn it, so I'm going back the other way. And you have to watch so that you don't get stuck by your pins. So now let's talk quilting gloves. As you can see, I could do that without them. I will also say it's a lot easier to do that with a 12-inch block that doesent have batting, right? Now, if it is a larger quilt that you are trying to do, I highly, highly recommend you get some sort of quilting glove. Now, here's the progression of my quilting gloves. I started off first with gardening gloves, okay? They had the protective little rubber sides for weeding and that kind of thing, but they are perfect for quilting. So if your buns are a little tight, you don't have to get the crazy expensive stuff, okay? A pair of gardening gloves is perfect. And if that's the way that you're going to go, I recommend watching at the end of the growing season for those clearance sections, right? Here is another pair that I have. These are more of a work glove, you know, with the cutting protection. So you aren't cutting yourself possibly. And again, just a bunch of little rubber pieces to keep you from sliding, you know, as you're moving your quilt. These help you grip that. And I actually use my quilting gloves when I am sewing on my binding, because it does help you with all those layers and all of that weight move your fabric through nicely. All right, now these are pretty nice. These are a very nice, well-made quilting glove from Krista Quilts. These I was given as a Benartex ambassador, so I did not buy these, but they are a really nice glove. I don't know if you're like me or not, but I get hot when I'm quilting, and these gloves stay pretty cool. They have the dots just right where you need them, so you don't have a full hand. Again, I don't think that is as important because I tend to use my full, but it gets you to practice to do these a little bit more with your fingertips. So, and you can use them both ways. So I really like to use those. And just a quick note that these gloves do not work well on your phone. So if you're trying to hit the record button, that does not work. All right, I'm just going to keep going. Now I'm going to not worry about the distance between my quilting. And in fact, I'm probably going to go out a little wider with each one as I go. Okay, hold that thread. Not as important because we're starting out here, but again, you'll want to hold that top thread just to make sure you're not getting the knots underneath. And now as I'm quilting, I'm actually not, again, watching where my needle is. I'm watching the edge where because this is the line I'm going off of. So even though I'm not worried about where the width of it is, I do want to try and keep them straight. All right, now we're stopping and taking that pin out. You do not want to run over that pin. And we're just going to go all the way down. Notice that I am going the opposite direction of my previous row. And I am going to go ahead and rotate this way because I know I went, my stitching line was that direction. We're going to go over here. Again, I'm just going to eyeball where I was over here and go ahead and stitch. I think I will take that one out. I was going to just try and get by without it, but we'll go ahead and take that one out. Now from this point on, I will just go ahead and quilt my way out on this side, and then I'll come and finish this side. There's no reason for that other than it makes it easier to remember which way I'm going if I don't mark those lines, which honestly I have to because my brain doesn't work that well, and there are many, many distractions, right? All right, so again, I'm just keeping my eye on the quilted line before so that I can keep this mostly straightish. And I'm not really pushing my fabric. It might look like I'm pushing the fabric through, but I am not. I am just kind of guiding it. You let the machine pull it. You just want to guide it and make sure it's staying as straight as possible. Unless you're going all willy wonky, then go ahead and go willy wonky, right? This is just for fun. This is just to get some practice in, and it is to get a finish in. So if you are just practicing on a block that you have, cut into a square, that's fine. Hopefully, as you get a little bit more confident, you will start to finish them, either a quilt block like this for a mini wall hanging or something similar. We aren't looking for perfection. We want finishes, right? And with every finish, oh man, sorry, I keep hitting my camera. With every finish, you get better. And so we're gonna just do this last one now. And the nice thing about the smaller leftover here is that you don't have to worry as much. I mean, you still need to watch it. You don't need to worry as much about the catching it underneath. I have had that happen so many times where you're just quilting along and then all of a sudden you realize your fabric had tipped under and you've quilted it into the quilt, and that is just a sad, sad feeling. So when you are doing something on your machine like this, you don't have to have that walk. When you bring it to a long armor, you need that 4 inches around because they have other things that they are working with. You don't need to do that, worry about that when you are quilting it on your own machine, because you aren't stretching it or pulling, on your machine to get those everything tight and taut. You've already got it pinned. All right, so we are going to go ahead, switch over to this side now. And again, just going back and forth. So I'm not pushing this fabric through, but I'm just guiding, but I also use it to kind of smooth it out as we go along, right? And you want to move your hands as you go. Now this is a nice, small, short piece. So there isn't a lot of adjusting that we need to do, right? But if it's a lap quilt or even a wall hanging, you'll need to stop and adjust your hands as you go, just because you have all those layers, you have the weight. When you have that weight, it's going to pull your fabric and make it harder for you to keep going to direct it. And so you will need to stop, move your hands, adjust, and continue. That's what's nice about these smaller pieces to practice on is that you can more get into the flow of the quilting and learn that. And that's especially nice when you start doing free motion and not something like this where it is a stitch that is doing the moving for you, right? We don't have to worry about that because the machine, Mr. Bernard here, is making that stitch for me. And so that is a nice part of this. You don't have to worry about that. When you are doing your free motion, you're going to, need to have a little more control. That again is where these gloves are nice. But you want a little bit more control and be able to see what you're doing here. So we're going to just finish up this last one, and then we are done with our challenge for this week. And hopefully there were a few tips in there that maybe you didn't know or you had forgotten. Every time I pull a piece out, I either learn something new or I remember what I had forgotten from, a class long ago, etc. So here is my quilted spool block. Done and done. All right. How many stitches did you use today? Just the one? Or did you go and try a couple different ones? We'll look into free motion quilting a little bit more as well as this challenge continues throughout the year. But I wanted you to just go ahead and use one that you didn't have to worry about where your hands were, where the fabric was, how to roll things up. I just wanted you to get going with those stitches and really try something different. So I hope that you did that, and I hope you go back and use a couple different stitches as well. So mine, I'm going to turn into a mini quilt, probably. I'll put a backing on it and just hang it up in my sewing room because I love a good spool block. What will you do with yours? I hope that you will share in the Quilt and Learn with Patterns by Jen Facebook group, or you can email me or use the hashtag Snippets on Instagram. All right, go make something you love.